Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 104 of the WP Café show with myself, Mark Wilkinson, and my co-host, Keith Devon. We are a little earlier than usual today due to some commitments in the afternoon, but we wanted to get the show out, so apologies for any listeners that it's a bit early for, but hey-ho, you can always catch it later. If you're new here, this is the WordPress show, all about WordPress development. We run a small agency, we build a few products with WordPress, and we chat about how that's going and the sort of challenges and successes that we face whilst doing that. We also like to get some discussion going on. So if you're joining us live on YouTube, then please let us know in the chat who you are, where you are. And if you have any questions during the show, then let us know. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're enjoying the video, please hit the like button. How has your week been, Keith, this week?
It's been busy.
Busy.
It's been good. Yeah, it's been good. Lots to get stuck into. Lots of, oh my God. It's just building in the new WordPress paradigm for me is just a roller coaster. It is like moments of, oh, this is really cool that you can do this these days. Like surrounded by moments of, oh my God, why is this so difficult? Why is this so ridiculous? Everything feels like a hack. So a real roller coaster, but I think on the whole, I wouldn't say I'm enjoying it in the sense that I think it's a good system or a good bit of software at the moment. But I'm kind of enjoying the challenge just because I like problem solving.
Yep.
That's kind of what I like doing. Especially if they're front-end challenges, which there are plenty of. So yeah, I guess I've kind of been enjoying it, getting stuck in, and we'll talk about some of the things that we've been working on. We've got a lot of content for today, so we could go long. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
a packed show, I think, isn't it today? Which is I think exciting.
So. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, busy like yourself, really. My week. We had some client calls, had some sales calls as usual, a few sales, which is always nice. So we've got a few of those to be integrated with. Had a really good client call on Wednesday that went on for like an hour and a half. And it was, interestingly, a lot of that call was all about classifying content and taxonomies and categories and tags. We had actually had that on the list to chat about today, but we've kind of got too much, so we thought we'll bump that to next week and talk about it next week. If you're interested in how to classify content and that discussion, then
how to explain it to clients.
Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, that was the thing. So yeah, it's been a good week. It's been fun. I like you really. I've enjoyed a lot of this, and I do think I don't know. I've kind of felt like towards the end of this week, it's been. I can see this getting easier now, if that makes sense. Like, I can see that we're working out how to solve these fundamental problems that we faced with full site editing for a long time. And I do think the more we do this, the more we'll find solutions to those fundamental problems, and builds will just become easier and easier because, well, we just do that and we just do that and we just do that to fix them. But I might be wrong. But that's kind of what I feel, that we've got some solutions to some problems, some of which we might discuss in today's show, no doubt. So on the list of things to chat about is a page tree menu for one of the projects that we're building on. We've got a little comment about like using one of the themes that are out there. It was at the Ollie theme, I think, and the problems that caused and the good things about it. So there's a bit of a discussion there. Keith's had a bit of a breakthrough, which is interesting. I don't know about this breakthrough yet. He Slack messaged me last night and said, I've had a breakthrough. So I don't really know much about it. So I'm in the dark like you guys. So that's good. And then we've got some other stuff about our FSE build, cards, loops, archive pages, how we sort of gone about that. And if we get time at the end, we'll have a quick look at the features upcoming in WordPress 6.7, which I believe is out next week, I think. So there's some good stuff coming in there.
Good. I haven't really seen much, so you can inform me at the same time as you're informing everyone else. Yeah.
So first on the list, and as I said, do let us know in the chat if you're listening and where you are. It'd be nice to hear you, or see where you are. First on the list is building a page tree menu. So what this is basically is we've got this design, and for a page, at the top of the page, under the hero, there is a sort of in this section. If that makes sense. And the idea being is that this is going to show other links to the other pages in the same section. Now, by section, essentially, we're talking about child and parent pages, aren't we here? So we're going to show the children and the parent that you belong to, etc., sort of like that. So over to you. What was the solution?
Yeah. So just to give a bit of a kind of example, the designs that we were given. So this is the school website we're working on, and it has a top level page called admissions. Under that, it has like joining lower prep, joining upper prep, joining senior, joining sixth form, and maybe a couple of other pages. And each of those pages potentially has child pages, potentially even has another layer underneath that. So we've got like, I think a potentially 4-level deep page structure
places,
on the site. And this little navigation is meant to kind of show you where you are and what else is in the section you're in. So I think my initial thought, well, maybe our initial thought was to use the page list block, which is fine, but you need to give it a parent. Yeah. And we were like, well, actually, we don't really want the client to have to do that on every page. And ideally, we wanted to turn this into like some kind of synced block, so that we could just have it as part of patterns, or the client can just drop it in and not have to think about it and not have to add it to the page, set it up, add the correct parent page, all that kind of stuff. So we're like, how are we going to do this? And we thought, we're going to have to build a custom block for it, and it's going to have to like figure out where it is in the tree. And then, so for example, if you're on the 3rd level, you don't just want to show the parent page of that and then its siblings and then its children. You want to show like the very top level. So we still want to show admissions at the top and then break it down. So you want to go all the way to the top of the tree every time, and then show the kind of list below it, but only what's relevant. So, the direct kind of ancestry, I think you could call it, of the current page. So we were just like, oh my God, how are we going to do this?
And one thing that the page list block doesn't do is it doesn't allow you to say, because you can choose a parent, can't you? Show me the children of this page that I've chosen, but it doesn't allow you to say, show me the children of my page that I'm currently on. So you can't do that. You have to choose a page from a list.
Yeah. You can choose the page.
You can choose the current page,
but you can't set it to current page. Yeah. Yes, I understand what you mean. So with all those limitations, we were like, we're probably going to have to build a custom block, and we were chatting through it, and I can't remember who it was, but one of us kind of had the kind of brainwaves that actually, if you don't add a parent page to the page list block, it outputs the whole page structure of the website.
It was me.
And then we were like, hang on, you're taking credit for that? That's fine. Definitely. You can take credit for that. I think it was you. And then it was like, and then can we not hide and show the menu items that we want to show with CSS?
Well,
because they all have classes.
When I looked at it, I was thinking, if we just stick a page list menu, which lists all the pages, all the depths, any page that you land on where that menu is present, you have exactly what you want. Literally have exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And you just need to hide the stuff that you don't want, which is what you then went about trying to do.
Yeah. So I've used lots of CSS around, I can't remember exactly what the classes are. I've got it in front of me actually, but things like, let me just quickly look at it. So current menu item, or there's like current menu ancestor, all that kind of stuff. So I was able to do it all with CSS basically, and just show the parts of the tree that we actually want to show. I would just say, I don't know what this is like from an accessibility point of view. So I'm setting things to display none. Using CSS to hide stuff may well help with SEO if you're using display none, Mark just says. So I am using display none. And then just like display block or flex on the stuff that I actually want to show again. So it's worked really well, and now we've got this synced pattern, or you just drop it anywhere you want on the site, and it gives you contextual navigation. So it's brilliant. I also love
it's
it.
really good. It's a good point that Mark makes, actually, because every page that's got this on it is actually going to have a list of all pages on the site and links to all pages on the site, although we're not seeing them. I think that's a good thing, but I'm not sure now.
Yeah, I'm just tabbing through. Yeah, you can tab through it, no probs. Like it doesn't try to tab through all the hidden stuff. So that's cool. So it looks fairly accessible. So it's great. So that there's a little win for us using a native block, and then we did really something fancy about hiding and showing it on mobile using block visibility plugin. The only massive drawback to this is that in the editor, you don't have those CSS classes. You don't have the is current, current menu item, current menu ancestor, all those kind of classes. They just don't exist in the editor. So all of my menu items are hidden. So I just did a little placeholder just saying this will be replaced on the front end with the menu.
And how did you do that? Did you do that with CSS?
Just CSS pseudo element with some CSS.
It's just like content, and then you type the
just
content
on after. Exactly.
Exactly.
You got to be careful with using pseudo elements though, because the block editor uses them for certain things, which is really annoying. Because I use them a lot in my CSS, and occasionally the block editor uses it. I don't know if it uses it for like the add block icon or something, but there's certain things that it hijacks it for it, which is frustrating. Right. But there you go.
I think it's a great solution.
Really neat solution.
I really like it. I think, and I've tried to get Keith to do this. You have to persuade him to write a blog post on this, how he does it, and the CSS.
Yeah, I need to share. I need to share the CSS because that's the useful bit.
Yeah, definitely. It just means you can use the native block without having to build something custom. And the custom one would have been difficult. Like, what page am I on? What ancestors have we got, etc.
And I would say that we've done this all under a custom class. Yes. So the page list block still works in its normal way unless it's under this custom class. And you could just make that a block style of the page list block.
Yep.
That would be even better.
Because it's a sync pattern, isn't it? So the class is just assigned to the sync pattern. And I mean, technically the client could remove it, but they're not going to see it under that advanced body. And so I think that should be fine. But yeah, it's a good solution. That I'm pleased with that. It's good.
Yeah, happy with it.
Yeah. So if anyone's got any comments on that, let us know. But we're going to move on to this next one. Now, this is a video that Frank Klein, is that how you say it? Sorry, did, and it was sort of responding to one of Keith's questions on X. And if you didn't know, we've changed the WP Café website, which was just using 2024, I think it was. We didn't really do any work on it. It was just installed and a place literally to house the podcast and serve the podcast files. So we thought it'd be nice to use the full site editor to get something looking a bit nicer. And we looked at the Ollie theme, which has had a lot of work from Mike McAllister, and thought that looks a nice theme. And it had a specific podcast set of patterns, which you can use to sort of do like a podcast theme, if that makes sense, on your website. So we thought we'd give that a go. I had a go at it and did that. And Keith's question was that I'd done all my beautiful work, and then Keith said, hang on, the fonts are wrong. Like, we don't use... I don't even know what it was, but we don't use that. We use Montserrat for the headings, and we use something else for the body font. Anyway, so Keith just went along to change that, and not all the headings changed, did they? A lot changed to Montserrat, but some didn't change to Montserrat. And I'll kind of let you take over the story because you'll know more about why they didn't change than me.
Yeah. So they didn't. I think we spoke briefly about this in the last show, maybe. They didn't change because Ollie has, in certain Ollie patterns, Mike is changing the font family of headings. So his basic font family for the heading fonts is like it's the bold kind of regular font. He also has a condensed version of the font that he uses in certain circumstances in the design, in certain patterns. So he has added an H2 to this pattern, and instead of it taking the normal H2 font family. He's setting a specific font family to a condensed version of the font, which looks great because he's a really good designer. The problem is that CSS has font family condensed or something like that is hard-coded into that pattern. So it's looking for that condensed font. So even though we've changed the normal heading font to Montserrat, the condensed font is still the condensed font that comes with the theme because Montserrat doesn't have a condensed version. And there's nowhere in the editor for me to replace that condensed font with something else.
So right? It was that when he applies the condensed font, it added a class, didn't it, to the heading element that said that has font style condensed.
And that class is baked into the pattern.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what I do in the editor in terms of global styles, heading level styles, whatever, font families. I can't remove that thing that says is font condensed or whatever. Anyway, so I said that on one of our previous shows, and Frank said this. I'll just play it.
For example, here at the Café show. So the Café show is a podcast by Mark and Keith, and they run a small agency, and they talk about what they are experiencing in their agency life. So it's an interesting podcast to listen to. And so they switched their website recently from whatever they had previously to Ollie. And so in their last episode here, Minimum Viable Design, Keith said, well, I tried to adapt the typography here to change the font that Ollie uses with Montserrat. And I changed the headings, so some stuff updated, but this here, for example, didn't. And so it's quite clear why this doesn't update, and that's because it has here a class which makes this a condensed font family.
The first thing I would say is Frank says it's quite clear what happened. It was clear to me, and it's clear to him. I would say this would definitely not be clear to you, and 100% would not be clear to an end user.
So here you see it has condensed font family. And so Keith looks at this as a problem with full set editing, but it's not really a problem with full set editing because technically it's quite straightforward to do. If you want to change the condensed...
Okay, so technically quite straightforward to do, and Frank jumps straight into theme.json. Again, I understand what theme.json is. As a user of Ollie, as an end user, not a WordPress developer, I have no idea what theme.json is and how to edit it.
Font, you go to theme.json, you look for the condensed font family, and as long as you keep the slug, you can change here font family to whatever you want and also the name. So if you wanted to change that, then you can do it. Technically, there are zero obstacles to it.
So this is something that I considered doing. Like I understood that I could do this. One, I don't know. I guess we do this in a child theme potentially. I'm not entirely sure if I didn't want to edit it, the theme itself.
Yeah, because editing the Ollie theme JSON would just get overwritten if it ever got updated, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but the second thing I don't like about this, like Frank says, this is technically possible. He's not saying this is how I should do it. He's saying this is technically possible, which I agree with. But if I do this and I change the font family in theme JSON, the slug is still condensed, and I just feel confusing. That feels hacky to me. It's like I'm not using a condensed font anymore. I'm hacking this so that where condensed is selected or used in the theme in the patterns is now going to override and use my version of the font instead. So Montserrat bold or whatever it is. That doesn't feel right to me. That feels like a bit of a hack. But again, it's possible, and that's what Frank's saying here.
Craig agrees.
However, the question is, do we even want to do that? Because here under font family, we see that we have the condensed monosons, we have the expanded monosons, and then we have just normal monosons. So the issue is not full set editing or this theme. The issue is just that you chose a design that uses 3 fonts for very specific reasons, 3 variations of the same font, and you try to making it a one font design.
Okay.
Yeah, but how am I supposed to know that the Ollie theme uses a 3 font before I purchase it? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't see that added as a feature. Like, hey, this is a 3 font theme with condensed and normal and bold fonts or whatever.
Yeah. So what Frank said there is this is not a problem with full site editing. It's not a problem with the theme. It was my fault for choosing a theme that has a 3-font design. So, like you just said, Mark, I didn't actually explicitly know that it had a 3-font design. I don't know where that's listed, where that's obvious. Maybe it is. Maybe there's something on the homepage that I missed that said this is a 3-font design. If you want to use this and change the fonts, make sure that your brand has 3 fonts or has a condensed font. I'm confused by this because I thought the whole point in themes and in this, especially in this new full site editing world, is that users are able to change these things. Like, I get that there's lots of potential reasons why you would just spin up a website and just use Ollie, right? Out of the box, no edits, because it's beautiful looking and whatever.
Lovely.
But surely a lot of people at the very minimum of branding is colors and typefaces, right? For me, that's the absolute basics of what like visual branding is. And if I can't confidently go and change my fonts on a theme using when I've got all these fancy controls that we spent 5 or 6 years arguing about, I'm confused as to what the point of all of this is.
Yeah,
you know, if
I
this is my
yesterday.
fault, I can't understand how this is my fault. But there you go.
To Mike on a Spaces thing with Brian Gardner and some others, and they were talking about child themes specifically. And Mike, it's not quite related to this, but he mentioned like literally the future of WordPress and the future of the web is a no-code future. And I think he's right. And it might take us 5, 6, 7 years to get there. It might take us 1 year to get there. It's a no-code future. And this still means that you need to code. If you want, like Frank's solutions in theme JSON was, you still need to code. So it kind of doesn't work really, does it? Like you were saying, if I can't change this thing, it doesn't work, which is kind of frustrating. I can't see anything about fonts on the Ollie theme website. So by the way, we're not having a go at the Ollie theme here. It's a beautiful theme. I really enjoyed using it when I was building the WP Café. I don't think it's a theme issue. I just think it's an issue with where WordPress is set up and so forth. Anyway, go on.
I do think it's potentially partly a theme issue, but not because Mike doesn't know what he's doing. I think because we haven't settled on certain standards within like of how to do these kind of things. So, for example, instead of the slug of that being condensed, could it have been font family tertiary? You know, could we have a font family primary, font family secondary? You know, and then it feels like you could swap them out more comfortably. I don't know, but it certainly feels to me that like that should be possible. Like we're using a 3-font design here, so here's where to change font 1, here's where to change font 2, here's where to change font 3 in the editor, but we can't do that. We can't swap those fonts out in that way in the editor. That's all because I think that's the problem.
So if those slugs were not specific to the font, like condensed, like you said, it was primary, secondary, tertiary font.
Yeah,
it would work, wouldn't it?
Yes.
You would get whatever you'd assign to the, you know, if that was tertiary, you get whatever you assigned to tertiary, I think, wouldn't you? So, but those naming patterns are like, they're difficult, aren't they? They don't necessarily work for some. And what happens? I suppose if you don't have 3 fonts, you'd just put 2 in and not use one, wouldn't you? But
they're difficult, but we are starting to settle on them a little bit. You know, like even font sizes these days. You know, we're starting to settle on like a t-shirt size kind of thing. You know, small, medium, large, extra large kind of thing for font sizes. And for spacing, we're kind of setting up some defaults now around the kind of spacing. So why not font families? I don't know. It is tricky because every design's different, and there's some designs that are like a singular font. There's some that have 3. There's some that have like 2 main font families with a bunch of variations. And I get that it's difficult, but it just felt like a really hacky way to do it. And to say that it was my fault, you know, I'm an experienced web professional trying to change the font on a theme, and it was not obvious, and I think that's a problem.
Ben, thank you, Ben, for joining us. It says, sounds like maybe there should be a plugin or an option to modify the theme JSON in the site admin. So 2 points on that. one, the full site editor is that. Well, that's what it should be, in my opinion.
It's not though. It's not even
I know
close.
it's not, but that's the interface for editing the things that you would do in theme JSON. From my understanding, the theme JSON is a theme developer saying, hey, this is the defaults. These are the settings for this theme. And then the full site editing experience should be, we'll customize them. That's what full site editing is for. So I think it isn't that at the moment. It's getting better all the time. Like we can do more and more and more that we could never do to start with. But I think I wouldn't want to see, something where you can edit theme JSON. Again, a user that has bought Ollie or Rockbase or whatever doesn't want to see a JSON file to edit things. That's not, I'd probably go all right with it, but I'm not that into theme JSON. I've not done as much as you have. And I just don't think a normal user that's just buying a theme and not a developer, not a web person, would have a clue what to do.
It looks like the Matrix to a layperson. You know what I mean? It's not.
And like we can edit the theme JSON. We know where it is. We know how to do it anyway. Like in the theme in the code editor, like Frank had in his video. But yeah. It's an interesting point.
Yeah, there's lots of really good comments here. I don't think we're going to be able to grab them all. But Mark Howells Mead has basically agreed about the naming convention things. So this is where he says this is where it's critical to name fonts in the theme.json as primary, secondary, etc., not Montserrat. Yes, interestingly, Mike doesn't name it. Well, I can't remember what the font was called. He doesn't call it Montserrat. He calls it condensed. Yeah. So he is kind of already opening that up to. You could use a different condensed font, for example. So he's not being specific to the font family. He's being specific to like the grouping, the font kind of.
But if you choose a font that doesn't have a condensed version,
exactly,
you struggle. Aren't you? I don't know whether Montserrat does or doesn't, but
yeah. Craig also says seems like something a naming convention would solve. Yes, I think
it would help. Definitely, wouldn't it? It would definitely go a long way to help.
Hang on, there's still nowhere. No, it would help that. But I'm just trying to think, is there somewhere in the editor where I can say, like, this is font 2?
I don't know.
Or the secondary font, and this is a tertiary font? I'm not...
You can install your own fonts, can't you? But how
you can install your own fonts, and then you assign those to, like, headings, and then heading levels, and then, like, certain part, that kind of thing. You've got that kind of granular control.
But you want to assign them to the existing slug. So I don't know whether you can do that in the editor.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I don't think you can, but there you go. So yeah, an interesting challenge. I'm gonna have to disagree respectfully with Frank on that one. I don't think that was all on me, but there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, there was an interesting little discussion. So moving on, you've had a breakthrough, an exciting breakthrough,
an epiphany.
It was even so exciting. I think you messaged me. What time did you message me last night? It was.
I was beside myself.
6 p.m. Yeah, you were like, "Wow, this is important to tell me." So, I was sat in a meeting at school with my son for his trip, and it's like, "Oh, Keith's messaged me. What's this about? This must be important." And it's like, "I've had a breakthrough. So anyway, what was your breakthrough? Tell me about it, because I don't know anything about it yet.
The context for this is that we were putting together the school website, and we were working on one of the page templates, and I think you were just adding some content to a page. We were like on a video call together, and you were adding some content to a page, and you added something, and you're like, why is this like butting right up against the footer, like the last paragraph on the page? It's like there's no space. And I was like, yep. that's the way it is. And you're like, why there should be some space? And I was like, well, where do you put the space? And you're like, well, we could add some top margin to the footer. And I was like, well, you can't if you want anything to butt right up against the footer, like another full width group, for example, as the last element in the page. You'd have to start fiddling around with negative margins. And that's messy because the spacing could be kind of responsive spacing, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, we were thinking about that. And also, like, just whenever you're starting a page from scratch, it was really bothering me that, like, I create a group and I put a heading in the group and I give the group a background color, and everything's just like condensed right in. There's no spacing, there's no padding, there's no good defaults to the editor experience. And
so what you're saying is we want, when someone drops these things on the page, we want there to be some defaults. We want there to be a little bit of breathing room so it doesn't look wrong and stuck together. At the same time, we want them to be able to go into the settings on the right-hand side, and we want to say, actually, I want more or less padding and change it there.
I think
overwrite it.
So my point is that whenever I add a group and I give it a background color, 99%, there's a 99% chance that I want that group to have some padding.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks like garbage. I can't ever remember a situation where I wouldn't have wanted to give that group padding. There probably is, but I can remember it. And whenever I put two full width blocks that both have background colors adjacent to each other, I probably don't want there to be space between them. I want those colored sections to meet in the middle. I don't want block gap. And people were saying, well, you could just, remove the block gap on the top, but then it removes the block gap for everything. Oh, you could use negative margins. Yeah, but I'm using responsive spacing, so I can't necessarily do that. So there's all this stuff. And anyway, and I was, I don't know if it was on my bike ride yesterday or something, but I just had this thought, and I was remembering the past 3 years ago when we were building themes, and I had all these really great like default styles to handle all these situations. So
and that was back when we didn't give control to the customer with padding and margin.
Those controls didn't exist yet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So there were no margin and spacing controls in the editor, full stop. There were lots of opinionated core kind of block styles that I had to wrestle with some strange specificity. But anyway, so I built this set of rules for one of I think the first project we ever worked with the block editor on, and they were great. Like, you just added the things to a page, and contextually, using CSS only, all these styles were applied, and we never needed spacing controls. Like, these sites have existed, and they still don't have spacing controls. We still don't use them, and the client uses these sites every day and builds new pages every day, and they never ask us if they can remove spacing or add spacing or do any of these things, and the pages just look right. They're consistent. Life was good, right? But I also understand the thought that sometimes you want some of that control. So one of the arguments could be just turn off the spacing controls in the editor. But I get that they can be useful on occasion. So I was like, hang on a second. What would happen if I just added some of those rules back in? Because the editor styles are inline styles. So they will take precedence. So what the holy grail here is that you add blocks to a page and they just look nice for 90% of use cases. They're right. So they've got the right amount of margin, the right amount of padding, whatever else you might want to add. They just look good. And then if you want to change them, the editor controls are there to change them. And I thought, hang on, that is exactly what will happen if I just add these CSS rules back in. So I did a really quick test. I wrote about 5 lines of CSS or five rules to test some of the padding and spacing ideas. They all worked. They worked in the editor. They worked in the front end. I then went back into the editor, manually set the paddings and margins, and they overrode my styles. And
perfect.
It works. And I was just like,
so
amazing. And then looping all the way back. I haven't tried this one yet. But looping all the way back to the footer issue, where there was a big chunk of space. So we looked at how Ollie did it, and I actually tweeted Mike about it. And he adds like a big chunk of bottom padding to his main container, so the main content container above the footer. So I couldn't. And I said, well, how do we do this? And he said, well, you could create a new page template and then just remove that. And I was like, God, new page templates just for that. I was like, I didn't like that. So
it would work. It's a good solution. It would work, but it does seem a bit.
I would argue it's not a good solution, but it would work.
It would work. Yeah,
it would work. But now I'm hoping that I can set those conditional rules to say, if you're the last element, this is what I used to do. If you're the last element in the main container, do such and such. So if you're if you're the last element and you're not full width with a background color, make sure you have some padding so there's some nice white space above the footer. So I should be able to do all that clever stuff. I'm really excited by that, and I know it seems there's probably people watching this thinking, Keith, that is so obvious. Like, of course that's the right way to do it, but for some reason I'd kind of forgotten that I could still do those things. I felt like I had to put those to one side because of patterns, because of the dimensions, like controls.
But one question I have, you said this works because when I set margin and padding in the editor, it's applied as an inline style. And I see that you get style equals, and then you get like padding, var, blah, 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 whatever. But when we were talking previously about the condensed fonts, that was a class that was added, has condensed font family. So what gets added as a class and what gets added as a style? Because there must be some things added with the class, surely.
Yeah, the spacing stuff seems to be added as inline styles.
Right, which is good in this instance then.
Yeah, fonts and colors, I think, are typically added as classes.
Right, but you'd still be able to change
and alignments
in the editor, though, wouldn't you? The fonts and things. So I think that's fine.
Yeah,
spacing is the one that people want like control over for different scenarios, isn't it? And different layouts of pages, like that footer example. You know, touching the bottom or not.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I'm quite excited to try to roll those my old rules into this new world, and hopefully create something beautiful. But I'm genuinely excited about that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's good news. We have got a couple of things left to chat through. What time are we on? 36 minutes. Well, we'll go for it. We'll have a bit of a longer episode today. So the next thing, I'll just have a bit of a break and we'll talk about features coming up in 6.7, I think. So these are just some of the things that I've seen that I think look interesting. You've probably seen them and heard about them, but I'll quickly go through them. So there's a new zoom out feature. So you can kind of zoom your page out a bit so you can see the whole thing. And I looked at that and thought, I mean, it's all right, but like, it's not, the whole holy grail that people seem to say it is. But then if you
haven't been waiting for it.
If you combine that with another feature you can do drag and drop patterns, that I thought was interesting. So when you if you zoomed out and you go to add a new pattern, you can then drag the pattern into the place on the page where you wanted it, and everything just sort of spaces itself out to give you a little slot to drop it in, which I thought was really nice, actually. That could be really useful, particularly for people using themes like Ollie and that sort of thing, where they've got lots of patterns to choose from and they might want to drop them on a page. So that was pretty good. Not something I know an awful lot about, but you can do fluid font sizes in the editor. I know you can do them in theme JSON, but it looks like you can actually do them in the editor now. So you can set your fluid font sizes in the editor. That might be nice for people that know what to do, which is good. This is an interesting one. There's a UI now for block bindings. So you should be able to bind data to blocks in the editor. Previously, you had to sort of copy and paste a little JSON thing and stick it above your block. So you can set like a content of a paragraph block to a custom field value. That looks really interesting, actually. I watched the live feed from Nick Diego, Rich Tabo, and Jamie the other week. Or was it this week? Might be this week. And he was doing a demo about that, which was interesting. Still some things missing in it. So, for example, you can bind. So he had a great example where he had a person post type, and he had like job title, LinkedIn URL, so forth, and they were custom fields. The problem is that you can populate that with the data, but you can't hide it if the custom field value isn't present. So what you want to do is like hide the whole section if there is no custom field. I believe block visibility might do that, but it's not in core. So, and actually, I was looking online. You can do it with CSS. Actually, you can hide a child element. Sorry, you can hide a parent if it doesn't have any children, or the children are empty. So anyway, you could do it with CSS. Not perfect, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. There's been some query loop block improvements. Previously, when you were looking at the query loop block, you had settings in different places, and it was really confusing. Like the number of posts to show was in the toolbar that across the top. I think everything's kind of been moved over to that right-hand side now, which is just much clearer and easy to understand. That's where I'm setting up my query loop. It just makes more sense.
I wonder, like from a UI point of view, how they're deciding what goes in the sidebar as opposed to the toolbar. Because yeah, sometimes I find it really weird what's in one and what's in the other.
Yeah,
I was gonna say typography kind of stuff, and like alignment tends to go in the. No, not even typography. Most of the typography goes in the sidebar, except like bold and italic. And I don't know. It's a interesting one.
Yeah,
interesting.
There's now a setting in the preferences to turn off starter patterns. Now, I think this is when you, and I've said this before, when you go to add a new page and you're using like 2024, when you click on add new page, this thing pops up on the screen every time that says, why don't you choose a pattern to start your page off? It's like, I think it's kind of like for the first time, you might be, I don't know, it just annoys me, but you can turn it off now, which is nice. And then lastly, the thing that caught my attention was the support for, are they called HEIC photos, which you have on your iPhone? Like when you take a photo, it saves it as that sort of format. You can now upload those to WordPress and it'll automatically convert them, I think, to JPEGs. So you don't have to sort of worry about that conversion. One thing to note on that, though, I think it is hosting specific. I think there's something with the host that they need to be using. So it potentially won't work depending on what host you're using. So
probably some kind of PHP module that it relies on or something.
Yeah, possibly. Most of them. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's what's coming in 6.7. So yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff there. Certainly stuff that we could use. The UI block for data bindings, I'd quite like for block bindings. I'd like to investigate that a bit more. Possibly not building as many custom blocks because you can bind data to them, but we'll see how it goes. And then last but not least, in today's episode, we've got cards, loops, and archives. So this is one of our build problems that we were having again over the last week, and the design we're doing is heavily based on like a card. So there's lots of cards on pages that they're like call to actions that link to different posts or external posts or pages or wherever they might be. And there's several types of design for cards. So we've got like a cover design, which is kind of like a card that's got a full picture at the background with some text over the top of it. We've got like an offset design that has a little content box at the bottom, which is sort of lifted up over the top and hovers over the picture. And then there's another one that I can't remember what it is. Offset design. I can't remember what the other one is, but there's three types.
There's a like text overlay one. Yeah, there's like they're kind of similar, aren't they?
Yeah. So we thought about how to build these, and we settled on a custom block for cards. And you could choose what style it was. You could add the text, you could add the images, you could add the links, or choose a page. We just thought that was going to be the best way of doing it for ease of change in the future. And to be honest, quite easy for the client. You had a card block, you've got the options on the right-hand side using ACF. It was lovely. And then we wanted to obviously build loops, like get me the latest posts, and they would use this card design. So we decided to go for a sort of custom loop block where we can select posts or pages or photo albums or whatever it was, and then they'd use a specific card design. And that was perfect. So we built that. You styled it all up. Wonderful. We showed it to the client, all working on the pages, and we loved it. And then based on the conversation from the last meeting with the client this week, we got talking about the news archive, didn't we? And what we do for the news archive. So we're sat thinking about how we're going to build this news archive. And then we're like, well, we need to use the query block because it's an archive. We want to be able to edit the archive in the full site editing as a template. And then we're like, but we can't then use our cards in the query block as easy.
Well, and we wanted to be able to use sticky posts. That was one of the things that kind of pushed us over the edge.
Post, we wanted to be able to use because the client wants to sort of stick, like the featured posts at the top of the list, if that makes sense. And then we're like, well, I could add sticky posts to my query loop. And I'm just thinking, I'm just going to end up replacing the core one here, wasn't it? So I went back and tried to sort of build our cards in the block editor. Did a 70% job of it, but it kind of worked, didn't it? We kind of got there as far enough that I thought, well, actually, if I show this to Keith will be just like, I can finish that off with some CSS or whatever. We couldn't do everything in the editor because there was some very specific styles, particularly things on hover where images are growing and divs are sort of growing and shrinking when you hover and so just to make it move and so forth. So we went back to that. So now we're in the position where we need to sort of, well, if we're doing that for the query block, we may as well do it use the query loop block instead of my query block. And then we may as well do the cards in the actual editor as well. So we're not there yet, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to go and use the synced overrideable patterns for the cards.
Yeah.
And we're going to create a card block, a card pattern for each of the types. So there'll be a cover card, an offset card, and whatever the other one was that I can't remember. And it'll be synced in that we can change the layout of the card and the background color, etc., or add something into it, and it'll populate across the website. But also the client will obviously be able to change it because it's overrideable. As in, you can override the image, override the text, override the link, override the button label. So I think that's the option we're going to go for. So we've kind of gone in one direction and then we've kind of reversed back.
I do worry that we're gonna hit a roadblock with trying to use core. And we're gonna be like, this is why we went custom. So
but then
we'll see.
The archive thing is a problem. How do we do that archive template? I mean, you suggested like just doing a custom block that outputs all the markup and everything. So you just drop a custom block on the archive template.
Yeah.
I just think that's way too much work to maintain, and I don't know. And then you're missing it. So we've reversed back into this core query loop block, which still has issues. You know, it looks rubbish on a tablet when you have like 3 columns of cards. I guess that's relatively easily fixable with code, but and a bit of CSS media queries. But so we'll keep you informed as to how that goes. But we've had to sort of re-engineer a lot of what we'd already done, which is frustrating to say the least. But anyway, hey ho.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just worried about it. I mean, because I tried to build those blocks in the editor, and there was a reason.
It was tough, wasn't it?
There's a reason we decided not to, and I'm just wondering if we've hit that reason again, or we'll see. I'd like to do it the way you're suggesting, because I would like to stay native as much as possible.
From memory, I think the main reason we wanted to go away from that was updating things globally. You know, how do we update the design of the offset card everywhere that's used on the website? Well, if we do it with our block, we can, and we can control the CSS, we can control the markup, etc. And I think that it's not as good, but I think we can still do that with a synced to overrideable pattern. And we can do it with a synced pattern when we're inside a query loop block. We can create like a query, post query card, and we can just update that because it's all dynamic data in there, isn't it? It's like featured image, post title. It's not actual stuff that you're typing in. So I think we can do it with that as well. That was our main reason, I think, for moving away from the core block, was to keep that. And obviously the fact that it was difficult to build the card, but I do think we can solve that with some custom CSS and custom classes and things like that.
Yeah. It's a bit gross because obviously some of the styling is in the editor, some of the styling's in a custom CSS, and so it's not a true editor experience, and it's not a true, this is a self-contained thing that we can just update and drop into a site. But there you go. Can I
Craig's given us vote of confidence there. Thanks, Craig. Sounds grim.
Yeah.
That's made us think we're doing it right then. Thanks.
Yeah. So I just wanted to quickly. Unless anything else on that, Mark, before I do a quick plug for somebody or something.
Well, it's just another thing. When a project lasts long enough that you forget why you made a choice, and you have to rediscover why. Yeah, that's true.
That's so true.
Yeah,
I'd be good to document some of these things. We've made this decision because, and then
how did you?
But you'd spend all day just documenting stuff, and you'd never remember to look at the documentation. So,
and I come back to what I said at the start of this show. Like, what have we learned? I feel like we're solving these problems. Like we're going down the rabbit holes to back up again, so we won't have to go down that rabbit hole in the next project because we learned from this project. I think we forget that we used to have to do that anyway for what all the solutions we were using because of various other different reasons. And we learned what was the best solution and we implemented it. And now we're just doing the same thing again, which is frustrating in many ways because you've kind of already got those solutions for the other way you did it. But in many ways, it's nice to learn new tricks and skills. So bit of a plug, you said. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, just something I came across because I knew that if we were going to go down this route, I would probably want to be able to create linked groups.
Yeah.
So you create a card, and the group that wraps the whole card. It can be linked to something rather than doing tricks around like absolute positioning of hidden linked elements or pseudo elements and stuff, which can also be done. But I just really like this. I found this, I don't know how I found it because it's really hidden. It's not on Nick's site, but this is a plugin by Nick Diego called Enable Linked Groups. And because it was him, I thought it's probably worth having a look at. There's other things on the repo. This isn't on the repo. It's on GitHub and it's not on his website as far as I can see. But for people listening along, github.com/enable-linked-groups. And it just does what it says. The group block has a little link icon, and you click the link icon, and it's just like linking a bit of text or a button.
And one extra good thing about it, because when you'd installed it, I was thinking, oh, this is not going to work, because in my query loop, I want to link to the current post. So I can't just have a link box that's like where I type the link in. But there's an option that says link to current post. So I don't know whether that's on every block or whether that's just something that Nick put on that block, but there's an option when you click on the link thing, link to current post. I was like, yes.
Very good. Yeah, so we're using this, throughout the site now. Hopefully, I mean, I'm not sure how stable it is, but I trust Nick. He makes good stuff.
It'll be fine. Anyway.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Right, I think we'll wrap it up there. We've done an epic marathon of 51 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the chatter, discussing our sort of trials and tribulations of our builds. I'm saying we should be back next week. I'll have a quick look at the calendar. Looks like we'll be fine. So it should be back to normal time at 1:30 UK time. So thank you very much for joining us. Please give us a like if you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in next week's show.
See you soon.